Thank you for joining us today. The ABA Civil Rights and Social Justice Program, How Things Work, the Legal Edition, which is a rapid response project that addresses how our civil rights are being impacted by the actions of the current administration. My name is Mario Sullivan. I am the Chair of Civil Rights and Social Justice, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to this conversation. These videos are a unique opportunity to address what is happening in America today, to clarify any misinformation or disinformation that's being spread, and how civil rights and social justice advocates can act to protect everyone's rights. Today's topic is focusing on the firing of the federal workers and its impact on us and our communities. It is more critical than ever to have this topic. As we confront these challenges, it's essential to examine how these issues intersect with the principles of justice and equity that guide the work of our section and the ABA generally. I'm excited to have with us today Fatima Graves. She and her expertise and background have made leaderships in these fields, and we are grateful to have her here, willingness to share her insights with us today. And without further ado, let's dive right in. Fatima, thank you for being with us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the National Women's Law Center?
I'm so glad to be here at the National Women's Law Center. We fight for gender justice. We do it in the courts. We do it through our Congress and in states, and we do it through our culture. And we've been a leader in every major legal and cultural advancement for women's rights since we were founded over 50 years ago in 1972, the same year Title IX passed, a year before Roe came down. And we believe that women and girls don't lead single issue lives. Our work takes us to work on reproductive freedom and health, pay equity, childcare, economic justice, ending sexual harassment at work, at school, ensuring our civil rights protections are meaningful, and protecting a democracy for all of us. And we also have an action fund that does even more narrative change work and where we house all of our political work.
Again, thank you for being here today. We've seen the Supreme Court allow the administration to continue the firing of federal workers and its impact as kind of what we're talking about today. Can you talk a little bit about the firing and the EEOC commissioners and kind of how that's going to impact our communities?
Sure. And if you don't mind, first, I want to just name a couple of things about what the EEOC actually does, because it is such an important agency. It has been around this year for 60 years. And listen, we know that everyone deserves a fair chance to compete for job opportunities, to be treated with dignity and respect and equity at work. That's a value that people in this country don't disagree with in general. And the EEOC's job is to enforce our laws that prohibit discrimination based on sex, race, national origin, age, disability, religion. Um, and discrimination in the workplace remains widespread today. In the last fiscal year where the EEOC reported data, they had 88,000 new charges of discrimination, up almost 10% from the year before. So the plate at the EEOC is always already full. The idea that there would be such immediate and forceful and partisan and illegal um, cut of two knowledgeable expert commissioners was really devastating during a time where the EEOC's plate was even more full. But what we know is that the EEOC is also not just historically, but by statute, bipartisan. It is a bipartisan group of commissioners who are tasked with protecting workers for enforcing our civil rights laws. So it's not just some sort of administrative role. It's also not the idea that the EEOC's job is to carry out the will of the president. It is inherently and by statute also an independent agency that has just such great importance to the lives and livelihoods of millions of workers. So it was alarming and terrible to see the terminations of these commissioners who are expert at their job for absolutely no basis under the law, or no other offering otherwise for this administration to remove the commissioners before their terms end. Again, these are independent agencies. They do not just serve at the pleasure of the president. They have been historically and for important reasons and by statute independent and bipartisan. And so it was terrible to see the illegal firings.
Definitely. And this kind of goes overall the administration's attack on DEI in general. I know that the EEOC is also standing down from claims by individuals who are transgender. You mentioned that it being an independent agency and that they don't serve at the pleasure of the president. What do you think is going on here, and what can be done to stop it?
So, I think the president has made it very, very clear that when he's going after DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, what he's really trying to do is undo our core civil rights laws to make it less possible that people are protected at work from discrimination, to make it more possible that working people are exposed to threats, intimidation, harassment, and discrimination at the whims of their bosses. Um, and and so in many ways, it is an especially cruel message to engage in that sort of tactic with the EEOC itself. Um, and if you are a working person in this country and watching what's happening, you may be wondering whether you still have rights and protections. And the answer is yes. The Trump administration does not have authority to take away this 60-year-old statute, but it does have the ability, as we have seen, to really rapidly undermine the work of the EEOC to make it less possible that it can be effective, or to do illegal things, as you said, to just wholesale stop addressing discrimination based on gender identity. And we've actually recently filed litigation against the EEOC because they have taken those steps that they don't have the authority to do.
I love to hear that. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about this case that you guys filed against the EEOC?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we were stunned by is that early on that we saw uh, Chair Andrea Lucas basically in an acting capacity. She has now been confirmed as chair, but basically on her own unlawfully refused to enforce federal workplace protections for transgender workers. And I want to name what that means in real time. It means that people who had been discriminated against, who are sort of in the process and believe that they were going to have the EEOC to fight on their behalf, um, suddenly were left hanging. And cases that were ongoing were dismissed. They were halting payments to state and local civil rights agencies who had been investigating claims tied to discrimination based on gender identity. All of this is in contrast to both how the EEOC has operated historically, but also that the EEOC can't just decide to do that. It can't just decide that whole categories of discrimination no longer matter because they don't like trans people. It makes no sense. And it wasn't that long ago where the Supreme Court in the Bostock decision made very, very clear that Title VII's protections against employment discrimination, that they include sexual orientation and gender identity. So they confirmed that LGBTQ plus people, that trans people are protected from discrimination by our nation's civil rights law, by the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. So the EEOC's refusal to enforce these protections, just based on the fact that the Trump administration doesn't like it, that is not enough. And Trump is not a king. I know it probably feels differently for people when they see him acting so far outside of his scope of authority, but he cannot undo civil rights protections with the stroke of a pen. And so we, together with Democracy Forward, we're very glad to co-counsel and file a lawsuit just this summer in the district court for Maryland on behalf of Free State Justice and against the EEOC and its now chair.
Great. What can a individual do if they all of a sudden find themselves in a situation where the EEOC has said, we're not moving forward with your case, or we're dismissing your case? Are there any other kind of protections or rights that an individual would have to move forward on their discrimination case?
Well, one thing to know is that if the EEOC is not moving forward, this is really why it's so important for the private bar to step up in a whole bunch of ways to take on cases of discrimination. The EEOC is making it harder, but like I said, they cannot and have not undone the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I also feel like I should tell everyone who is tuning in about the National Women's Law Center's legal network. We have run a legal network for gender equity since 2018. That legal network receives intake for people who've experienced sex discrimination at work, but also at school, in housing, and in healthcare. You can find out more if you just go to our website at nwlc.org/legal help. And we have hundreds of attorneys in our network who are ready and able to give a free legal intake at no cost.
Great. We'll be sure to put that on our website too. Um, you know, we've talked a lot about the troubling times right now in this two-part series. You know, the rule of law is under attack, and it's kind of a terrifying period in civil rights and our democracy, sometimes at a second basis versus a daily basis. What keeps you going, and what gives you hope as you continue to do this work?
It really helps to lead an organization that is more than 50 years old. And one of the things I know is that the founders of the National Women's Law Center founded it right as Title IX was passed, before there were no rules, before harassment had been understood as protected, before there was a Pregnancy Discrimination Act, before there were meaningful protections recognized for women and girls in this country and for lots of people. And so I know it is possible to dream of a world that you don't see in any given moment, because that has been our history at this organization. And I know it is possible to fight for our future, to fight for the future of the children that are watching all of the adults, wondering whether or not we will get it right on their behalf, and all of the people who I'm just very lucky to walk beside, who are ready to fight for justice and for our very democracy. And so it keeps me grounded. It keeps me hopeful. The many people who display acts of courage every day keep me really, really hopeful. And I know we will get through this period.
Well, no, I completely understand that. The mantra we made for our year in the section is stronger together, we endure, we prevail. As we know that all of us, stronger together, we will be able to endure what we have been seeing transpiring and what's to come from the administration, and we will prevail in the end. And we have 60 years of history of prevailing, and we will continue to do that. As we come to a close, thank you again for being a part of this. Is there anything that you would want to leave any of our listeners with on what they should be thinking about or doing as we see the administration's attacks on all the EEOC and all of the other federal agencies?
The only thing I want to say is that lawyers have a very special role to play in this time. As guardians of the rule of law, you are really guardians of our democracy. And if there is ever a time to remember that, to remember you took that oath, to remember that you could be a part of the fight, it is now.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for shedding light on what's happening and how it impacts our communities as well as our profession. This has been a very interesting and exciting topic to talk about. It's unfortunate that we do have to talk about it, given the history and the purpose of the EEOC, as well as many other federal agencies. To everyone who's joined us today, thank you for being a part of this important dialogue. The issues that we explored are complex and challenging, but when coming together in this space like this, we are taking meaningful steps towards progress and learning on what we can do as a community and as a profession. Remember that the work doesn't stop here. It continues with the actions we take in our communities our workplace or organizations such as the National Women's Law Center, as well as within the American Bar Association. I encourage you to stay engaged with the ABA Civil Rights and Social Justice section and become a member if you aren't one already. Visit our website and explore upcoming events, and consider joining one of our committees to help shape the work that we are doing. You can see more information at ambar.org/CRSJ. Once again, thank you for watching and keep fighting. Together we can and we will make a difference. Thank you.